There, and welcome to LogoJET's Adobe Illustrator training course. Today we're going to be going over the toolbars here, and will mainly stick with the ones that you really need to know for printing applications. There's a lot of specialty ones in here that you're in reality never going to use, but I'll go through the ones that I'll briefly touch on all of them, but you will go through the ones that you're going to use day to day. And to start off with, there are the two ones at the top. That kind of gives you an idea of their importance. These are the selection tools, and this is just called the selection tool, and the one with the white fill is called the direct selection tool. And that's how you're going to select things to interact with them in Illustrator. So the selection tool will allow you to select objects, but the thing about that one is if they are grouped like this peacock here, I just happen to know it's grouped. If I click on it, you'll see that selection tool selects the entire object. Now, if I need to get in here, you'll find once you get to know these programs, there's often a couple of ways to do certain things. So I will show you a little overlap here. With this one right here, selected, if I double click on it again, you'll see everything else kind of fades out and it is selected. Only the peacock is selected. If I double click again, I can drill down into a little further into different groups. And you can see there's a little breadcrumb right here where this is a layer one group and there's a groups within groups. So you can get into things with the direct selection tool pretty easily. Now, let me back out of here. You can just go off of the artboard, double click to go back to your main selection, which is nothing. And with the direct selection tool, the difference between those, it automatically will go into direct selection. So even though this stuff is grouped, you can select little specific objects. So, for instance, if I wanted to change the color of this fan, I would, and I'm holding down the shift key to select multiple objects at the same time. You can select all of this and go over here and you can change the color and say we want it purple, so that's how you would get to individual objects to select them. You can go about it either way, whatever's good for you. um, the magic wand tool is I've never really had much use for this. The way it works is you can select certain things and it selects the same range of colors in there. It it's could be handy, but I've never really had much use for it. So if I wanted to select everything that was that same color, you can also go over here to the select, same, and then fill and stroke or whatever attributes you want. And you can see there's nothing else that is exactly that LogoJET, the jet color orange in this piece here, but it's a little easier to go through. It's more obvious to me what you're selecting, going through the select menu. But the lasso tool is exactly like it sounds. It's for selecting a group of things. So you can say, I want this. This one I've also really not had much use for because it is too broad in my opinion, but I can see some cases where it would be applicable. But everything that it selected lit up, but in Illustrator, you'll see some of these little connection points are fully filled and some of them have a white center. Now, with the lasso tool, it only selected the ones that are fully filled. These, even though they're lit up there, they have, I guess Illustrator has to do that because they're part of the shape, but in reality, the only thing that is actually selected are, you can see where I kind of cut the bat handle in half. A lot of those points are selected and a lot of them aren't. So again, that one is of, you know, not too great, you know, usability on that. It's, not too handy in most cases. Now, the pen tool You can use this if you're creating or drawing your something in here. A lot of times you'll be, if you're on the printing end, you'll be getting art and, just adjusting colors maybe. But if you actually have to draw something, you can use the pen tool along with these other shape tools. But the pen tool is exactly like it sounds. It is, you'll draw a shape, and it can also do curves with the pen tool. So I'm just clicking between here. If I hold the mouse click down and pull, you can see it pulled a curve on that. So if I don't hold it down and just click, you can do a variety of those. Now let's go to the direct selection tool here, and if you need to change the angle of something, I am going to attempt to select this here. You have to get it right on it. And you see how it selected something, but because that little box is white, I know it didn't select it all. So I'm going to click on that again, and you can see it pulls out these little handlebars that you can take and change your shape here. You can also grab the point itself and move the point around. And there's a couple of other things too here. Inside of here, if you see a little small triangle, that means that there's other tools in there as well. And these anchor points, you can add an anchor point, delete an anchor point, or you can change the type of anchor point. So adding is exactly like it sounds. If I want another anchor point right there, it just added it, and it automatically did the right handlebars, put them in there for that particular type of point. If I want to remove an anchor point or delete it, you can do that, and it maintains the shape line here. Now, I would recommend using the delete anchor point tool rather than just deleting that anchor point, because you can see right here, this is a shape that's filled, but it's not closed. And there's going to be some instances where this is going to be a problem. For instance, I can't add an anchor point here because there's no line between these two. So it's better to remove the anchor point or delete it rather than just delete it with this tool rather than just deleting it. Now, the anchor point tool here, you can also change the type. And you see how it clicked into point to point rather than the curve that I had. This will allow you to change the type of anchor point, whether it's a curved anchor point or direct point to point. And you see how it just turned it from point to point back into a curved one. So clicking it once there's only two states, so it goes back and forth between them. Now the curvature tool, even though I was able to draw some curves with the pen tool, this curvature tool is real neat. You can click on a point, and I didn't have to hold the mouse down to make this curve. I just kept on going, and it'll make curves. If you do need to do a specific point, you can double click, and it will make, when you double click, let's say I double clicked on this anchor point right here, and it made a stopping point. It didn't create a curve. It's kind of two ways of doing the same thing, like I had mentioned earlier. And you see how it closed it. A lot of a lot of designers will find this tool really easy to use, but it's your preference. This one you can get a lot more detailed on that, but it's sometimes harder to control those details. This one's a little more loose, but it's a little easier to, it can be easier to, draw a shape. Now, the next one here is the type tool, and this will be the default. Let's get rid of these guys. and I will be using this as a demonstration of the type tool in a second. But when you have just this selected, if you just click on the artboard, and it will drop in some Greeking text, and you can then go in there and add your text. If you need your type to stay within a certain area, when you can click and drag, and it will create a shape, and you can see how my type is staying within a certain area. So if I make it a little smaller, and let's just copy this a little bit larger, some applications you can see where you would want to constrain your type. Otherwise, if I wanted to make this particular paragraph with the regular, just free type, I would have had to go put a return here every single time. It's much easier to let it constrain itself if you need to keep your type within a certain area. And you can do a type area tool, which will put it, I have to have that selected to actually use that tool, excuse me. So the type area tool, you actually have to have it selected, and you have to be on this path here for it to for the tool to work. You could see earlier I was, there was an error that popped up, but once you see that path selected, it will pop in to a complex path. You can have a variety of different shapes, and you can add text to them. Don't really use this one too much. However, let me just Command Z or Control Z, depending on which application you are in. Type on a path tool, I have used occasionally. So the same thing applies. And when you click on that, it will allow you to put text around something. And a lot of people will use this for, let's go back to the type tool so we can get rid of some of this. You can make type that has a different shape and not just on a straight line like that. So you'll have to create the path first, then put the type on the path, and you can see you can control the placement by using these little bars here too. So if I had other text, which see how this is the opening of the paragraph or sentence, and this is the closing. You see, I took this second bar, and you can get rid of it. Generally, I'll push these over all the way together like this. That way, there's no issues, and you can get the text you could like it. Let's see here. Let's get rid of this and just draw another shape. And we'll go over the next one. Vertical type tool. Vertical type tool will let you add vertical type, and this is another one that I've never really had much use for. You can do it manually. So this is vertical type now. So not really a whole lot of real world uses for that. Vertical type on a path, same thing. And touch type tool. The touch type tool is pretty neat. You can select things, and I haven't really had a whole lot of use for this, but I can see sometimes you would. Now, the neat thing about the touch type tool is it's non-destructive. It still keeps it editable. So if I wanted to change, something in there, I could still do it, and it maintains its editability. A lot of people would have just created art out of this. Right now, it is an editable font, but you can go to go to type and create outlines here. And what that does is it turned that type into art. It is no longer editable. Now, the old way to do that change was to create outlines and then move your O's up and manually, you know, adjust everything. But with the touch type tool, you can go and make a lot of cool little changes. You can also change the size of these. It's really neat. You can even change the angle of them, and this will be completely editable. So if if you have something you need to change the actual spelling of it or something, you can still do that, which is really neat. Now, the line segment tool is, exactly like it sounds. It's just drawing a line, and it is a little limiting. You can also draw these lines with the pen tool, but when you draw a line, you can see it doesn't give it a fill or a stroke. I know I'll cover this a little bit later, but I'm going to give it a stroke just so we can see it. And it just drew a line. So you might get some use out of it, but the next one here is the ellipse tool, and you can draw a lot of different other shapes. You can do rectangles, rounded rectangles, ellipse, polygons, stars, and flares. I've never really had a use for the flare tool, but it's there. Let's go ahead and get rid of some of this stuff so I can demonstrate. So the rectangle will be your default, and it draws a rectangle. Now, the thing about these is, like I was saying, there's often two ways to do everything in Illustrator, or some things at least. You see how they have these little markers here. If I were to grab that, I can make rounded corners like that. And if I wanted to have just one corner rounded, you would use the direct selection tool to select just this corner and say I wanted to do a shape like this, like a little, you know, put an image in there or something. You can also take these, and by clicking on these individual points, you can see now I have adjustment handlebars, and anything in Illustrator. Once you select an individual point, you can see it will kind of behave, kind of the same, so you can make a lot of different types of shapes with these. The ellipse tool is exactly like it sounds. It is an ellipse. Also, worth mentioning, I should have mentioned in the first one, if you have the tool selected and you just single click, you can put in an object of your specification. So if you want a rectangle that's 2 inches by 2 inches, you can click on that and it'll create a 2 inch by 2 inch rectangle. And same thing for all of these shapes. You can select the type you want, single click, and then put in specific numbers. And for that's not really that important for these guys, but when you get into polygon and star, it does kind of become important, because when you click on that, you can put in the amount of sides and the radius of the polygon. So we're going to keep this at this size, but we're going to crank this size up to, let's say, 16. And you can see it created a 16-sided object. So that's how you could create special things for like stamps or things like that. Or and stars are the same thing. You can click on that, and you can radius 1 is the interior dimension, and radius 2 is the exterior dimension. I'll show you what that means in a second. But let's say we want a 10-pointed star. We'll click OK, and radius 1 is the internal dimension. So this circle inside of here, you can see it kind of lit up there, was that first measurement, and the exterior dimension is the outer edge of the circle. And when we get into fill and stroke, I'll cover some other things as well. You can make these points rounded and whatnot. But one thing worth mentioning too is you'll see inside of here, let me move this way of that shape so it's a little clearer. You'll see those little white uh, controls. You can do things like this or do things like this as well. And if you click in here, you can also, by grabbing that little white controlled dot, you can pull out things and make things different sizes. So I guess you could make a polygon with the same sort of shape, So it's pretty versatile. And the flare tool, never really had much use for it. It creates a little flare that if you put it over something, um, it creates a little lens flare. And, that might be kind of cool, but, for design, but I've actually never had to use that in real life. And I've been doing this quite a while. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. And this is another one that I've never really had much use for day to day, but you can do a paintbrush and a blob paintbrush tool. And what the difference is, a paintbrush is you can do exactly like it sounds. Now, I'm not going to go through, you can load all kind of different brushes and things in here, but this is more of a freehand way of drawing or illustrating, and that you're probably not going to run across much. And the blob brush tool is kind of like it sounds. You can create blobs, and let's just make a real messy one here. And when I go and select the direct selection tool, you'll see it made vector objects or a vector object of all of this, whereas the paintbrush, it was just a path with a stroke on it. So that's the difference between those two. It's gonna, the blob, that's really silly name, but I guess it's appropriate. It's going to create a shape with a fill, and the brush tool will have and you'll have a stroke or some sort of attribute on that path. Now the next tool here, let's get rid of some of these. My computer's running a little slow today. This shaper tool, this is another one that can be useful, but I've never really had much use for it because you can do everything in the shapes here that you can do here. This is simply if you draw a shape, it'll make a shape for you. So, and you cannot get too complex with this. Say I wanted to draw a star. I'm not even sure if it will do it. Yeah, it won't do that. So, um, let's see. Yeah, I see it's thinking about that. It's so much easier just to go through and use the actual star tool. All right, folks, had to take a little break there. Doing that star with the shape tool actually crashed Illustrator. So I don't really use this too much, so I don't think you're going to have an issue with that. Another one too is the erasers and scissors and knife tool. Don't really use those very much. There are some applications for that, and I would suggest looking up a specific tool focused video. This is more of an overview. So the rotate tool, you can do rotate and reflect. I do use these. So if you take let's do a star here so you can see what's going on. So direct selection tool. Now you can also, by getting close to this edge, you can see that that little cursor lit up. I can move these without going to the rotate tool. But if I know I want to rotate something exactly, you can double click on it and you need to move it 90 degrees. You can be very specific by the numbers on these things. The only thing to watch out for is you can see right here this little kind of target cursor, and I would zoom in, but the little cursor here would stay the same size. You can click on a point in here to move that cursor to get it to spin exactly in the center, or if I wanted to spin with the anchor of one of these arms, I would click there and you could get it to spin on that axis rather than the very center. Now the reflect tool works the same way. Say I wanted to take something and just, let's grab the chicken to demonstrate a little better. Say I needed to grab the chicken and just reflect it. I could do this, but I'm never going to get that exact same angle right. You can use the reflect tool by double clicking on it, and you can change your axis to from vertical to horizontal, and you can change the reflection angle as well. And I think you can grab it and kind of move it. But if I wanted just a mirror image of that chicken, you would click vertical and it would give you an exact mirror image of it, keeping all of the measurements correct. So I do use that. Scale tool is another one that I don't really use that often, because you can do the same thing with the direct selection tool, but I'll demonstrate here. Now the scale tool, see how it has the anchor point for the scale, and you can take it, and one thing that's easy to mess up with this is the aspect ratio, the width to height. You can definitely get that incorrect, but if you hold down the shift key, it will keep that aspect ratio within a certain point. So if I go at if I pull away at a 45-degree angle, it'll keep that same shape. But if I go farther than 45, it'll kind of pop into different different measurements. But it's easier just to do this and hold down the shift key if you need to scale something. It's much easier than using this. I don't really use this that much. Now the shape builder tool is neat. This one right here is, there are some, this is more for an Illustrator or something like that. You're probably not going to use it too much if you're creating, or if you're dealing with files, someone sends you for the printers or something like that. But if you're actually creating files and you need to make a complex shape, and this is not going to be anything pretty, but say I needed to make a complex shape out of a bunch of different assembled objects. Say I wanted all of this to be, or some of this to be connected. And how do I connect all of these? So you can go to Shape Builder tool, and you can see how it kind of highlights different areas, and you can just drag across areas that you want to be the same, in the same shape, and you can see how it merges those shapes together. And I just created one grouped together shape, which is really neat. In some applications, it can be very handy. Now, this perspective grid tool, I have never ever had to use it. If you would curious about it, I suggest Googling a video about the specific use of this tool. The warp tool, or the mesh tool, excuse me, is this could be kind of handy. So if I select the mesh tool, you can, too many points to create a gradient mesh. Yep, sorry about that. The mesh tool, you can create complex gradients within an object. So if I have this selected and I click the mesh tool, you see how it put a single line in there that I can actually fill with a color, and you can create some really neat things with this. And just like all other points with Adobe Illustrator, all of the same rules still apply. So this is the only one that's selected right now. So this is the only one that I am actually interacting with. But you can see the handlebars pull out. You can adjust things within that mesh. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get exactly on that handlebar, but you can see you can all of the same drawing uh, rules still apply. You can take these guys and really, create a do what you want within a gradient. And I rarely use this one, but it is very handy. The gradient tool itself is a little different than this one right here. If I want to go and add a gradient to something, a lot of this drawing right here doesn't have gradients applied. You can see they just use art shapes to make their the effect. But if I wanted to add a gradient to something, I would click in here, and you really can't use this tool without using the gradient window and the swatches here. So to adjust your gradient, you'll see I had a default of these two colors. You would take a swatch and drag it directly over that gradient, the right end of the gradient here, and you can adjust the gradient features here. You can also change the opacity of things in this window, so you can see it's a little opaque. I changed that to 20%. A lot of the folks use these for shading effects. In fact, I think this one right here might actually have a gradient in there. I'd have to click in there, but you see how it's a little darker down here at the bottom than it is up at the top. There is a transparent gradient somewhere in here that is kind of creating that shadow. So gradients are very useful, and you'll see them a lot. This one right here, I've never really had that much use for. It's a dimension tool. It simply just measures things, and you can see it pops up with the exact measurement. But the same thing is also over here as well. In the tool, I believe this is a contextual toolbar. So this is going to change. There's going to be a lot of different things, that come up based on the object that you have selected. These are a lot of different, and I'm going to go through this towards the end, but with the contextual shape tool, contextual tool panel, you can see a lot of these objects properties. So, you can see width and height here. You click this little chain. We'll go through this a little later though. You can lock the aspect ratio if you're going to resize it, but we'll go through that in detail a little later. The eyedropper tool, I don't really use this too much. If I need to know a color of something, I can just go over here and select it, and you can see this guy right here is purple, and with the swatches and the color panel open, you can see exactly what you have selected. So it's this swatch, and then I have CMYK sliders out right now, but you can see that purple is 75 cyan, 100 magenta. You can also change these to RGB sliders, and it's the same thing. The neat thing about it is a lot of things you're going to get will have hexadecimal colors, and that is available in the RGB slider palette. You'll see the hex color here. So if somebody sends you a hex, you'll have to input it here to fill your artwork with. But blend tool is another one that I haven't really used too much, but I can demonstrate here. Say I want to blend these two shapes together. Can use the blend tool to I can use the blend tool to create a blend between the shapes. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. And it made a, I haven't really had a lot of use for this because it's not a true vector object. And you'll see they're not actually joined here. And you can have some weird effects with this, but it's nice to have if you need it. This is another one similar to color fills in strokes and gradients. You can have a sprayer tool, and this sprays symbols. And I've actually never had to use this professionally. So let's select a symbol, and you can see it just created this big giant splotchy mess. I've never had a time where I had to use this. Again, if you were really interested in this, I would suggest going to find a specific tool, tool specific course. Same with column graphs, and I've never really had to use this one. Artboard tool though is very handy. So if you have an artboard and you need to change something about the artboard, its position, its size, you can click on the artboard tool, and the contextual taskbar up here will have just about everything you need. You can see its X and Y dimensions. You can see its width and height. And by X and Y dimensions, you see how the 0 is. I'm going to pull out a guide right here to specifically demonstrate. You see how the 0, it is a little off of the X and Y 0. You can adjust that. One important thing about the artboard tool is this little guy right here. This move and copy artwork with artboard. You can uncheck that if you need to move the artboard and have your art stay the same, or you can select it and your art will move with the board. And there are some instances, I can't say which one you would prefer, but just know that that is, if you need to move something around, this tool will allow you to either lock that art with the board or not. And there are some applications you'll discover that that's very handy. Also, you can zero out that art to make it exactly on X and Y. There are some applications, particularly with digital marketing, where your artboard should be on that X and Y axis of 0. But for the most part, it's not really that important for not really applicable for printers. The width and height, however, is. If you need to change your artboard to a specific width or height, you can do it by the numbers here. And if you know you need to lock that aspect ratio, see right now it's not exactly square. Say I wanted this artboard exactly square, I would select 3 and 3. But if I wanted it to, let's say 3 by 5, I knew I wanted it to be 4 inches by whatever this next measurement is. You would lock that aspect ratio in there, and it will proportionally expand that object for you on the artboard. Let's go back to 0. And I believe I covered this in another video. You can also duplicate artboards. Obviously, you can have more than one artboard on in a file. And let's see here, what's next? The slice tool. Yeah, so this is meant for a lot of web applications. You can create slices, which I'm not doing a very good job of it because I never use this tool. But just know that you can create slices, and it's meant for web development, for saving out the individual buttons and things like that. So won't really keep on going on that one. Hand tool is really pretty self-explanatory. You can grab the artboard. I use a lot of key and mouse commands to move around. You notice by moving things around, I've never actually had to use the hand tool. So let me demonstrate that. Holding down the space bar will give you the hand tool. So holding down the space bar will do that. And Command Control on a Mac, Windows Alt on a PC will allow you to hold that down, and scrolling your mouse ball or wheel will allow you to zoom in and out. And that kind of covers the next tool down here, which is the zoom tool. You can go over here and select it and zoom in and out. Holding those same Windows and Alt keys will allow you to zoom out as well, but you can do the same thing by holding the key and holding the keys down and scrolling with your mouse wheel. Rotate view tool, and I've never had to use the print tiling tool. In all honesty, I don't even know what that is. But the rotate view tool, you can take the view and rotate it. Again, I've never actually had use of that as well. So the last one is objects on a path. You can paste objects onto a path, but again, I've never had much use for that. Yeah, again, if you're really curious about it, I suggest going and looking up a tool specific video. Down here, I've been talking about fills and strokes, and this is very important. And finally getting there. And what is the difference between a fill and a stroke? You can see there's a lot of fills in here. I don't know if there's many strokes. This chicken was mainly built with fills or converted to fills later, but I will demonstrate on some simpler shapes. So let's go right here, and you can see it has nothing filled in here. You can click on color or gradient to actually give it a fill, or you can do the same thing over here. So if you click a color, it's going to automatically fill with that color because this one was forward. You can use this little arrow tool to flip it to where the fill is now a stroke. And I'm going to go through a little more detail when I get to the drawing section, but your stroke weight, you can bring up the window here. You can also see up here some of the attributes in this contextual taskbar are the same way. Once you get used to using a certain way in Illustrator or using Illustrator in a certain way, it's two ways to get to the exact same thing. But you can increase the stroke, you can you can change the attributes of the stroke. Say I had let's go back. The star was a really good example of this one. So you can see there are the caps. Actually, a line segment would be better demonstrated on that. If you zoom in here, you can see the cap is just the shape of the endpoint here. There are times when you would want it to be curved like that for and also where you would want the flat cap to be not exactly on this pixel. But let's go and demonstrate the other aspects of strokes here. So the corners, you can also select how you want them to be shown, and you can see you can make them rounded again, and you can also make them a little more angular here. This one is kind of important, although you wouldn't think it would be that important. The align stroke, this tells Illustrator where to put that stroke in relationship to the line. So the align stroke, this is, there's equal space on either side of that path. You can put it all the way on the inside or all the way on the outside. And you can see it adjusts the shape a little bit to that, because if it's all the way on the inside, there is no way it round it, because it's not a round object. So you can go in and adjust your shape with this stroke alignment. You can also put arrowheads on things. Sometimes I've always found it easier to draw, because you can control uh, what you want that arrowhead shape to be, but you can also go and put arrowheads on things. Again, this could be of varying use, because a lot of these tools will make these shapes, which you can print, but you can't really adjust the shape of that if it's not what you want, as it's not a true vector object. You can see it is an effect applied on that path, and there's no points in here that I can take and grab and change. So it is of dubious use. I'm sure some folks will have some specific applications where it's handy, but but I don't really use the arrowhead uh, part of this too much, and you can change the you know which side you want it on and whatnot. Let's see here, and we kind of covered fill a little bit with that gradient mesh, but over on fill here, you can select some you can use the gradient tool to fill this, or you can go over here. Illustrator will come with some gradients already in the swatches palette here, and you can fill that with a gradient, and then use the tool here to change your colors. One thing that I didn't cover on the gradient tool is actually changing where this is, and you can do a lot of changing here by the numbers, and say I want this to be a 90-degree angle. You see it changed it to 90 degrees, but sometimes you just kind of want to play with it. So if you select the gradient tool, you can take this guy and just drag it, and you'll see you can adjust the angles, and you can adjust the, the different attributes of that gradient by going here. And you can also select, whoops, sorry. If you hover over this guy uh, just the right way, yeah, you see that it's kind of hard to get to. You can take this and you can turn it. You have to, there's like a 4 pixel area where you can get to this, but you can change it just like that, and really fine tune your gradient. But that's another aspect of fills, is the is gradients, because you can put multiple things in there. You can also put patterns in there as well. Again, I don't really use this too much, because it's not a true vector object. You can select a pattern fill for things. Except for advanced designers, I find these pattern fills a little hard to hard to use and hard to explain. So if I wanted this pattern to be smaller, I have to go through some certain steps, and it's just a little more complex than this portion of the class. Um, but you can also go here, and with this selected, you can do a fill, a gradient, or if I wanted to get rid of a particular type of fill. So let's say I had this filled with the turquoise here, or teal. You can click none, and you have an empty object, and all it is the path with nothing applied to it. Now, this is another one where I've never really had much use for, but I can see someone maybe using it. This simply tells Illustrator where you want to draw. So if I want to draw normal, it's going to draw on top of things. But if I want to draw behind something, I would click that, and it is going to put that shape or it should have put that shape behind it. Again, sorry for the break there. I had to do a little testing because it only works for certain objects. It again, that's why I really don't really use this one too much. It's much easier to go in your object settings and manually put things where you want it. But it wouldn't do it for the star, but with the rectangle tool, it it works. So you can put things behind all of your objects. Again, um, not very useful day to day, but it's worth knowing. And then draw inside shape works the exact same way. If I had a shape selected and drew something, a simpler shape, it would put it inside of that shape. Now change screen mode. You can, I usually just work in normal. You can change it full screen mode with menu bar or full screen mode, and it would either uh, take the whole artboard and change it the full screen. Whoop, excuse me, full screen mode with menu bar is what I have up here, simply by going to the expand window, and it expands it to the shape of your monitor. But the full screen mode would just be the art and your cursor, and it's not very handy. So this guy right here, if you're looking for a tool, again, I just know where the tools are, but this is a full uh, list of all of the tools that we have available. And it's handier to go through here because they're kind of grouped by like uses. Over here, it is they're just in the thing. You kind of got to know what you're looking for specific tools. And I would suggest another video course specifically on AI because Illustrator now has generative AI features where you can go in and tell it, I want a scene, a sunset by a castle or something, and it'll draw it for you. But and do a lot of other things, but it's a little beyond the scope of this course. But folks, thank you for bearing with me. This has been kind of a longer course, but it takes a lot to go through all of these tools and some basic functionality about that. Illustrator is a wonderful, wonderful program, but it is kind of complicated. And once you get used to it, what basic functionalities are the things you're going to need to print. A lot of those will be the same day to day. You know, the selection tools, the sizing tools, and the positioning tools are going to be your bread and butter more than likely. You're probably not going to be tasked unless you're a designer with changing a lot of colors, but you do need to know about some of those selection tools. Say, a client came in and, they wanted this sign here to be a particular green, right? And you needed to adjust it for some reason. You would have to go through here, and you now have the knowledge to go through and select exact little things and change things. So folks, I do appreciate you sticking with me for this one. This was a pretty long one, and I wish you the best. There will be some other courses that go into detail about drawing techniques and specific printer applications. But I felt we had to cover the basics of the tools if you're just brand new to Illustrator. So again, thank you very much, and good luck, folks. Bye.